Okay, so Katie, we're open.
In a second, YouTube will be live, but you can go ahead. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. Greetings, everyone in the virtual world here. My name is Wade Frick. This is the February 22nd, 2022 meeting of the Village of Chagrin Falls Board of Zoning Appeals. Sorry that we are virtual for this meeting, but again, we'll do everything we can to keep everyone safe. So we appreciate your attendance tonight. We record everything that we do from this point forward in this meeting. We also will make minutes of those. So I will do my best to run what I call an informally formal meeting. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak, but I want to make sure people don't speak over one another. When a new speaker is going to speak, the law director will swear him or her in. And then I ask that you state your name. And if you think of it, even an address would be helpful for our note takers. So we want to make sure, again, everyone who joins us tonight has a chance, an opportunity to speak. And it might be a little awkward in the virtual world, but we've lots of experience doing this. Katie, thank you for joining us tonight and for helping us from the village to get through the technology. We have two administrative appeals before us tonight. The application of the appeal of Jim and Leah Dustin as the moving parties in this appeal. If you haven't joined us before, what I'll do is we'll ask Rob Jameson to take us through. We'll take these administrative appeals one at a time, and we'll ask Rob to sort of give us the procedural background. We'll give the moving party an opportunity to state their case, present their evidence. The board will ask questions throughout that process or throughout that time. We will eventually then get to an opportunity for anyone who's joining us in the audience to ask questions or make statements. I typically ask for anyone who would like to speak on behalf of the application and get those comments done. And then those who would like to speak in opposition to the appeal, I should say. So again, if you're waiting out there, be patient. We'll make sure we won't end before we give everyone a chance to speak. We'll take the witness swearing in one at a time. Let's first turn to the administrative appeal of the November 16, 2021 ABR decision dealing with the front porch for the Dustins. And Rob, if you could please start by giving us the background to frame it. Dale, yes?
Yeah, a couple of things. Mary Lou Mellinger is here tonight as a court reporter. I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And Katie, you need to promote her up to be an attendee because she may need to interrupt us if she didn't hear something. And I would ask everybody who speaks tonight to try and speak slowly and distinctly so that Mary Lou can hear what everybody's saying so she can transcribe it. Other than that, I'll just turn this over to Rob.
I had a note that Phil Eckenrode had his hand raised.
I'm sorry, who had a hand raised?
Phil Eckenrode, the attorney for the appellant, had his hand raised.
Katie, can you allow Phil to speak?
Might have a question before we start.
Or do you want me to add him to the panelists?
Yes.
Okay, doing that now. Seems to be working a little slow, so patience. All right, he's in. And asking to unmute.
Yes.
Phil, did you have a question?
Oh, hi, everybody. Sorry, I had the hand raised because I didn't know if that's what we should do to get in at some point, but I can wait until Rob presents the overview. That's fine.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And I've got, just for the record too, I've got Mr. Dustin is here, Ms. Pantuso, the architect, and Mr. Neff, the contractor, as well as my colleague, Amanda Barreto. So once we get to everybody, we'll just have a few more people that'll need to be let in and sworn in.
They're physically with you, or they're other,
They're virtually with us.
okay, got you.
attendees.
Okay,
So should I put him back over?
Yes,
so I guess once that's done, Katie, let us know, and then we'll turn it over to Rob for the background on the front porch edition appeal.
You are
from
good.
ADR. You're good? Katie, you're good?
Yeah.
Okay, Rob, over to you.
All right, thank you, Wade. I'm going to go through a timeline of events as we had them noted here, and I will stop where we conclude with the porch matter and when the first appeal hearing was, or the first appeal was received. The timeline starts on this property back in 2018, where plans were submitted for an addition to the rear of the house by the previous owner and a different architect than the one involved at this stage of the project. A historical significance report was performed by Perspectives Architecture, finding that the existing house was found to be historically significant and that the proposed addition would have an adverse effect to the historical significance of both the house and the proximate historical structures. That HSR report was accepted by the ABR, and eventually plans for the addition were approved by the ABR after some revision back in 2018. That addition was built. In 2019, plans were submitted for a new detached garage and a new rear deck by the new current owner and architect. So the plans were approved by ABR with modifications, and that detached garage was constructed. The village is currently awaiting a final inspection request to close out the building permit for that part of the project. In 2021, plans were submitted for a new whole house generator to be installed in the rear of the property at 289 North Street. Variance was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals for the generator location in the required rear yard, and the generator was installed. At the September 21st, 2021 Architectural Board of Review meeting, plans were submitted for preliminary approval for an expanded front porch, modification to the existing front porch columns and steps, and modification of the third floor dormer window on the front side of the house. ABR voted at that meeting to revise and resubmit plans. At the October 5th, 2021 Architectural Board of Review meeting, there was discussion about stone veneer that was found to be applied over the existing stone foundation walls by the contractor without approval or permit. No actions were taken by the ABR at that meeting. At the October 19th, 2021 Architectural Board of Review meeting, there was further discussion on the stone veneer and front porch design. The ABR voted to revise and resubmit plans. At the November 19th, 2021 ABR meeting, the final porch plans were submitted, the revised plans for final approval. Final approval of the porch plans were granted by the ABR with the additional requirement to use only original materials for the front porch. More specifically, this means to have a wood floor instead of the proposed stone and concrete floor. And then on November 26, 2021, the first administrative appeal was filed by Leah Dustin to the November 19th decision of the ABR in approving the front porch plans with modifications. And that's where we're at with up to speed with the first administrative appeal.
The porch, okay.
And I do have documents, both plans for the project as well as materials from the appellant to screen share as needed.
Okay. And Rob, you have what you read from is a document you prepared?
That's a timeline that we prepared internally here, yes.
Okay. All right. So if we need to, we might get a copy of that.
It was emailed to the board a few moments before the meeting started.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, so with that, we'll turn it over to the appellant, the appealing party, who would like to, who is presenting? And again, we'll take one at a time. I guess we'll raise hands and then we'll allow you in one at a time, and Dale will administer the oath as appropriate.
Looks like
Or
Phil has
swear
his
you in, I
hand.
should say.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, please.
Looks like Phil has his hand raised. So, and Jim Dustin as well. So we'll do Phil first.
Well, yeah, I'd leave it up to the appellant. Who wants to go first? Let's have that person raise their hand. The others, put your hand down. We'll get to you. So who wants to go first?
Okay, Phil's is the only up right now. So I will do.
Okay, so let's let,
Jim just raised his. I'm gonna send a message. Okay,
okay.
Phil can go first.
So we'll
Promoting.
allow Phil in. Dale, I assume you don't have to administer a swear in an attorney?
Unless Bill plans to testify to present facts, I would not need to swear him in.
So Phil, up to you. Are you
He's
presenting
not,
facts or the case?
he's not in yet. He's got to get
Oh, okay.
unmuted.
He's in now, asking to unmute. He should be good now.
Phil, are you presenting the case or do you want to be sworn in as a fact witness?
My intention was just to present the case, and so I don't believe I need to be sworn in.
Okay, great. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the members of the board for your time and working through the nuances of the Zoom with us. Appreciate the opportunity to present. Although we have two separate appeals before the board tonight, I would submit, and we can get into this a little later, but I would submit that the issues are very much interrelated, and I'll get to that as to why. But I'm joined here on the call as we need them by Matt Neff, who is the contractor, Rebecca Pantuso, who is the architect on this project, and Mr. Dustin as well. Like a lot of people who are newer to the village, the Dustins were excited to come make an investment in this already improved piece of property and kind of finish a job that had been started. And they purchased the property in May of 2020. At the time, the house was basically halfway through kind of a pretty significant overhaul. I think Mr. Jameson's timeline of events is spot on. But when the Dustins purchased this property, there was still significant work to be done to kind of bring the materials together on the house and kind of finish the job up to the standards that this community holds its houses to and that the code supports. We took care of the garage building, as Mr. Jameson noted first, and built a brand new building there, which is improved the property significantly. All told, the property value has more than doubled since 2018. Now, essentially working from the back to the front, as the prior owners had done, the Dustins then came to the porch project, which is the subject of our initial appeal. As Mr. Jameson's timeline kind of sets out, it is procedurally a little clunky in that, we initially submitted plans back in September for a removal of the porch, construction of a new full width porch with a central dormer. We did resubmit plans, revise and resubmit in the November meeting, which were approved with the conditional approval. But this appeal really is about getting to, as we, I believe, noted in our papers, getting to kind of the initial submission of the porch as submitted by the plans in November of 2021. Now, I'd like to pause, if I could, and allow Mr. Dustin just to introduce himself to you all and to just say a few words about how he and Mrs. Dustin came to own this property and what their kind of vision is for continuing to improve what's already been significantly improved in the last few years.
All right, Katie, can you allow Mr. Dustin in, and then Mr. Dustin, before you speak, we'll have the law director swear you in.
Promoting him now. He's in.
Just looking for you. We have to see you.
Yeah, I don't see him yet, but he's coming soon, I'm sure. Okay,
There we go.
he needs to unmute.
Yeah, Jim, if you could unmute, please.
You could unmute. There you go. Good.
There you go.
Rob, Dale, can you please swear Jim in, please?
Sure, I don't have a Fu Manchu tonight. Jim, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, members of the board. I appreciate your time this evening. As a longtime resident of the village, both in South Russell and a 3-time back to the village resident, when my wife and I sold our property in South Russell to move back to the village, we anticipated a nice, quiet process. That unfortunately hasn't been the case. And we now find ourselves 2 years into a project that should have taken roughly a year. For a variety of reasons, that's disconcerting. But when you've spent the kind of money we've spent to try to improve the property, and I think we have a history of doing so throughout all of the projects that we've encountered, both in the village and out, we just want to try to get through this process. We've done, I think, everything we can do, from hiring quality architects and builders to put the property into a place where it makes sense. Unfortunately, when we bought the house, there were a number of things that needed to be done, not the least of which was to take down a garage that was not suitable for any cars to be inside of it. So we rebuilt that. We've accommodated the architectural review board for a number of add-ons that we didn't anticipate, including the retaining wall that was required to put the driveway back in. We've continued to try to manage the process, but we were living with a house that essentially was 2 houses joined together. So we assumed that we could continue to use the materials that had been approved, and we have done so. And when we came to the porch, we wanted to try to bring it back to what is the original 4-square look that we've seen in numerous places throughout the village, which is the full front porch across the entire house. There's been some questions as to whether or not our porch is original. I think everyone that's looked at it would tell you that it's not. And I think we've tried to accommodate the ABR in terms of what they want in the architectural standards. And we agree with that, but it seems we are at an impasse, and can't seem to get past that process. Hence we find ourselves here. We're well into, 7-figure renovation. I think the property values are enhanced across both myself and all of my neighbors. And I think all of my neighbors would appreciate our ability to finish the project so that everybody can move on. I'm hopeful that we can have a good dialogue, and I appreciate any thoughts and comments from there. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jim. I think we'll have questions as we move through this. Can we just perhaps, I guess it's a question for Katie or Dale, can we leave Jim in and just have him mute himself, or how can we, what's the easiest way to keep him around?
That's fine.
Okay, so I see Jim's muted. Thank you. So I guess we're back then to Phil.
Yeah, thank you. And, to the extent as we go through this, if we need Becky or Matt, I would just ask the board's indulgence that we let them in at that time. But Jim more than likely will be able to answer any questions you all have. I just want to kind of step back, starting with Mr. Jameson's timeline, which was 2018. In 2018, prior owner, prior builder came before the ABR and asked to construct an addition on the back of what I believe was only about a 1,300 square foot house. Construct this addition on the back, which would more than double the footprint of the house at that time. And the village hired their expert, Ms. Sloan, who on November 29th, 2018, issued a report and indicated that the plans as originally proposed by that builder would have an adverse effect on the historical significance of the house, more than doubling the historic footprint and massing and altering its four-square form, which would make it ineligible as a contributing building to an NR historic district. Now, the builder did resubmit plans, and in some fashion, enough to get the ABR to approve the addition at that time in 2018. But what we would submit respectfully is that even with that resubmission, for the last 2.5 years that this project has been approved on the addition part of it, the home still has more than doubled its historic footprint. It still has altered its four-square form, and nothing from Ms. Sloan's report in 2018 is any different. So I just asked the board to look at what the Dustins are requesting through that lens. Yes, this house is more than 100 years old. Yes, that has significance in the code, and we don't dispute that. But I would ask the board to look at the requests that are being made through the lens of a report from the village that indicated 2.5 years ago, once you more than double, I believe the addition is more than 2,000 square feet. Once you more than double a home's footprint, its historical significance is greatly reduced, if not vitiated completely. So I would just ask the board to keep a note of that. Secondly, even if the house is still historically significant, as Jim said, right, the end result of what was originally proposed in our plans was to have a porch that would be a full width porch with a single dormer that would look exactly like the examples that are in the village guidelines about what American four squares are like. They're one of their central features is a full width, usually a full width porch with a single dormer. And that's all that the Dustins are asking. They're not asking for the porch to be removed so that they can put some modern design or something crazy that doesn't look anything like the houses on the street. What they're asking for approval is a porch on a house that will look like the American four squares that this house was originally built as. And I'd ask the board to keep that in mind. Now, we're happy to take questions about the porch itself, but as I indicated earlier, I do believe that this is a central story on how the ABR has treated this property, and not only this homeowner, but prior homeowners and prior builders. And I think it's relevant to the board's decision as to whether the ABR's seemingly arbitrary decisions that they've made should be looked at in that lens as well. And I'd like to just give a quick preview about the siding and the vinyl issues, and siding and the window issues, being respectful of Mr. Frick's request to have these treated separately. But as Rob noted, we filed our appeal November 24th, I believe probably received by the village on the 26th. And after that, we were just kind of sitting and waiting, right? Because it was, we filed it right before Thanksgiving. I don't believe a December meeting was held by the BZA, understandably so. We were waiting to get in front of you all in January for that appeal so we could talk about the porch. And seemingly out of nowhere, Mr. Neff, the contractor, was called before the ABR to talk about the siding. Now, this is siding that had been part of this project for months and had never come up as a problem. And yet he was asked to come in and explain what was going on. And they were taking issue with the siding. They were taking issue with the windows and siding that have been there for months, that are merely trying to replicate what had already been done on the pane and pane addition to the back of the home. So what the board, what the ABR, asked is for Ms. Sloan to review the siding, and she actually recommended that the siding just be continued. She felt that it wasn't significant enough to worry about. But on January 4th, we went back before the ABR again. I was there, Mr. Neff was there, and I would I would encourage this body, if they haven't already, to watch the video from that meeting. What was seemingly intended to be a discussion about this project and siding and this project and vinyl turned into a discussion about the 2+ year history of the project and things that had been done with or without approval, prior builders that should or should not have their licenses revoked within the village. There was all kinds of consternation about, anything that this body does. Everybody just runs to BZA because they don't respect our authority. And it couldn't have been any further from talking about Jim and Leah Dustin and whether the siding or windows on their house were appropriate. And what the chairman said at that time was, they were tired of it. They were going to draw a line in the sand, and certain flaming individuals needed to be that line. And they were going to take it out on the Dustins for maybe passing on the addition that they regretted passing on, maybe other things they regret passing on, but the Dustins were going to be the example. And Ms. Naylor talked even during the meeting about how there's been so much done to the house over the years that maybe it's too late, consistent with Ms. Sloan's 2018 report that says when you more than double the footprint of a house, how historically significant is it? A house where you can see this entire addition from the street. This is not like it's tree lined on both sides, and if you drove past, it would still look like a 1918 American Foursquare. If you drive past, it looks like, a 3,000+ square foot house that might have resembled a Foursquare in front. So the ABR's charge is to review each project that comes before it and fairly and consistently in applying the village code. And there are no property owners, no builders that have to be or get to be the line in the sand. We're supposed to have an objective, reasoned review of each one of these projects as they come. And I would submit respectfully that the Dustins have not had that. So thank you for indulging my blending of the two issues. But I think it really is important to kind of tell the story about how the Dustins and this project and even prior owners and prior builders have been handled at the ABR level. And if you have specific factual questions, we'd be happy to answer those either through Mr. Dustin or the builder. But we respectfully submit that the plans as submitted for the full width porch are not only appropriate, but they increase this home's value. They match other houses on the street and in the village. And they're the kind of improvement to a piece of property that I would hope that the village would encourage its residents to engage in. So thank you for your time, and I'd like to help facilitate answering any questions you might have.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I have so many questions. Thank you for your presentation. So bear with me as I go through some of my questions. I'm a little confused as to how did the rear construction end up happening? You say there's the 1,300 square foot house. It's more than doubled. Ms. Sloan produced something that if you more than double a footprint, the house is no longer historically significant. How did that get changed? What changed to allow and again, I understand you might not know because I guess it's the previous owner. Do we know what happened or why this addition was approved?
My understanding, best I can tell from the minutes, sir, is because of course, that's all I can do, is that perhaps the roof line was lowered and there was some modification made to maybe the back. And I could not be further from an architect. So Becky's probably on mute, just cringing at hearing me describe this. But the key things that weren't changed that I would submit, as a non-answer to your question, the key things that weren't changed are the footprint, the massing, and the alteration of the Foursquare form. I mean, the village guidelines, when you talk about American Foursquare, an American Foursquare has 2 to 2.5 stories, a nearly square floor plan, and a blocky shape topped by a low pyramidal hip roof. You look at this project, this could not look any more not like a square at this point, not to oversimplify it.
Right.
The short answer to your question is I don't exactly know, but I would submit that the things that were changed between her report and their approval were not related to her reasoning as to why it wasn't historically significant.
And Rob, to you, I think you sent us that report, Ms. Sloan's initial report
I believe so.
earlier today or yesterday, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I,
Initial HSR was set, yes.
okay, the initial, okay. The other question, I've driven by the house 10,000 times, and forgive me, I don't recall now whether, is the dormer built currently on the third floor?
Oh, that's a
No,
good
it's-
question.
It's
Jim?
not. The existing false dormer is still there. We've been blocked from doing any more work. So as of right now, the house has two different sets of planking on the siding, two different colors, and nothing has been done since we've been blocked from doing any more
But
work.
there is a dormer now, Jim, is there?
It's actually a false dormer, so it's not actually a window. It's I guess almost like a vented, a vented small dormer.
Okay, because as I was reading through the plans, I kept on not understanding why the porch and the dormer were considered one in the same breath. I thought somehow dormer, I know what a dormer is, at least what I thought I did. And I somehow thought it was tied to the roof of the porch, but it's not. It's the structure on the third floor.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. I've read through all the minutes. I don't recall seeing a line in the sand comment. Is that documented somewhere? Do you know, Phil?
It's not, so I will tell you, it's not in the minutes. I heard it, it was in my contemporaneous notes, and maybe Dale's going to make me swear in because of what I just said.
Oh,
But-
do you know if it's on the video?
The last I checked, the village YouTube page, that video is not available on the webpage.
But that's correct, Wade. The video was taken down. Unrelated to this particular appeal.
Is the video no longer available at all?
No, the village has it. It's just been removed from YouTube.
Okay, so if we wanted to see that, we could see that?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me while I take, others of the board, feel free to chime in as I'm making notes here.
Yeah, Lisa Kramer, I have a point of clarification about what the Architecture Review Board actually approved, because they're not allowing an expansion of the porch. They just are allowing it to be rebuilt.
It's the
under their-
material.
No, they're
Okay.
allowing the expansion of the porch. The question is the materials, and then the notes or the minutes from that meeting reflect using original materials. So they did.
I
approve-
saw the original materials, but then it says maintaining the existing structure.
No, they meant maintaining existing materials. That's what the motion was, and that's what the appeal is about.
Just
Yeah,
the
and
materials, not, so the porch can extend the front of the
Correct.
house. Okay.
Yes.
And one thing, Lisa, along the lines, if you don't mind me interjecting
No.
with that. So my understanding is there is a stone facade along the front of the porch, and then the top, rather than being wood slats, will be cement. Is that correct? Is that what the
No.
design is?
No, the board approved using standard materials. We asked originally for the porch to be made of stone that is similar to the back patio, which we did, which is sandstone. They did not recognize that, asked us to resubmit. So we agreed to use the existing materials. That isn't, I think, the crux of the question at this point. I think it then becomes what happens to the other materials, including the windows, the siding, and everything else, which has sort of stopped everything.
So
Wait, you
I'm
might want to
confused.
repeat that, Jim. That's not what that's different than what I thought I understood. What is the issue that's before us as to the front porch?
Phil, correct me if I'm wrong. Am I misstating that? I
No,
think-
no, you're not. And Mr. Frigg, it might be helpful, Ms. Pantuso might be able to just, I know she just chimed in the chat here.
Right, she says they won't let them touch the existing porch.
Perhaps, Rob, can you pull up a diagram of the porch so we can look at it while we're talking about it and maybe point to some
Sure. Let
things?
me, give me a minute to find that, please. You can
Yeah,
continue
if I-
discussion as I look.
If I could help clarify this, the board voted to allow the expansion of the porch.
Right.
And what they said is the expansion had to use the same wood that was used on the existing porch. The appeal was simply from the denial of their plan, which showed it being stone. I don't think it was concrete. I think it was stone.
I
But
thought I read
could-
somewhere concrete surface.
okay, it's,
I can clarify that. Our original
Yeah.
request was to make a stone porch, but that stone porch is supported by a concrete foundation.
correct.
The original materials were to be sandstone with sandstone stairway up and sidewalk. That
So
was
the
the
facade
original.
would be sandstone and the floor itself would be sandstone.
Just the floor. The request to use similar materials, because right now there's, I don't even know what you call it, Becky would know. It's like the concrete block that are similar to much of the Foursquare that you see in Chagrin for columns. We'd originally requested to face those in the same stone that the rest of the foundation is faced in. So if you look at the foundation on the sides and in the front, there is stonework. We were looking to just complete that. That was the original request, which was denied.
But that is no longer your request, Jim?
I would like to finish it in a consistent fashion. I'm here to try to get a resolution. We've been thwarted from doing anything at this point. So, we're at a standstill completely on the entire project.
Okay, I see Becky's been answering some questions in chat. Perhaps we can admit her and have her take us through this. Not that you guys aren't doing a fine job of explaining, but Becky's been answering. So why don't we admit her if that's okay?
Yeah,
Becky?
we'll leave it to the expert to explain.
Okay, I will promote her. And then do you need to swear in, Dale?
Yes.
I do.
She is in.
I don't see her yet.
Ask to unmute, Becky.
Okay, Rebecca, I can see you now. Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So
Thank
Becky, can you just repeat what Jim's been explaining to us? What I understand from your comments that the ABR has not allowed you to touch, I think in your words were to touch the porch at all. What is it you're proposing to do on the front porch in full?
In the most ideal world, I would like to do a single hip roof across the front of the house that's consistent with the style of the house. That's been that was initially rejected. That was our first proposal and what quite honestly is appropriate for this house. There's, the rough, it's basically rock face CMU that's kind of peppered around Chagrin, has been deemed sacred. And the front porch was deemed, historically significant in that first ARB presentation. So now we've, through a number of iterations, tried to find a resolution, but, ultimately, if I have any say on the aesthetics, this front porch has been deemed sacred, and quite frankly, is just really bad design. Now, that I don't know if is appropriate or applicable here, but it seems like this thing is spiraling into a whole different animal. This simple hipped structure, and you can see on that drawing, kind of the outline of the blue is the existing front-facing gable. The front-facing gable, and anybody on that board would agree that it's poor design. The problem, the disconnect is they are deeming it sacred and have, you know, all of these other issues that they're trying to deal with. But if I brought this porch, Jim's current porch, and sorry, Jim, if I brought this into the ARB, they'd tell me to go back and to the drawing board and start over. So for whatever that's worth, we're trying to get something that looks good. And Rob, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong here, but the latest understanding I've gotten from the board is that that existing front-facing gable roof line cannot be altered. I can extend the porch to the left of that gable with another hipped roof line and step it back from that. But the ARB really wants kind of that front-facing historic porch to remain intact. And that's where we're getting sort of the disconnect. The hipped gable is, you know, that dormer that you see above right now, Wade, that's just a shed roof with like an ugly FIPON. You can see it in the, you know, on 3A3 at the top, you can see the side of it.
Mhm.
It's got, you know, kind of an ugly FIPON vent in it. So as Jim is trying to, you know, improve the overall aesthetic of this house, we were proposing to do a hipped dormer, like every other dormer on the house and every dormer on the garage. I don't believe that the ARB has a problem with that, but you know, it just, I haven't submitted a project this many times in Chagrin and as long as I can remember, and it seems like it's becoming more common practice to revise and resubmit.
Can I say something too, please?
Who's this?
This is Jim Dustin.
Jim?
Yeah, and to Becky's point, this design was not the original concept. The original concept was to have a full spanning front porch that had a center that peaked in the center like every other normal porch you would see in Chagrin Falls. What we've had to try to accommodate is the idea that the actual front porch that is there today can't be removed and has to remain, and therefore we have to create the extension out of some other vehicle. Is that fair to say, Becky?
Yeah, they just really want to keep that front facing gable. And for me, it makes me twitch because it's a front facing gable that doesn't align with the front door. There's just all kinds of architectural idiosyncrasies about it that, you know, quite honestly, I'm like, do I want my name on this porch? Like we're doing this half-baked thing trying to appease, you know, the powers that be. And I don't know, you know, I guess there's fundamentally, I am historically sensitive. I actually want all of our historic stock to be embellished and be nice, but I don't necessarily want to preserve bad design just for the sake of preserving. And I think that's where I'm maybe not seeing it the same way as the ARB.
Becky, it seems to me that I recall reading in the minutes a lot of discussion about the material that was going to be used for this and discussion about the stone facade, perhaps. Can you touch on the material issue and recall what you can recall that happened before ABR? I mean, I see there's an arrow right next to the blue shaded existing porch, pointing to looks like stone material.
Right.
Is that, I thought that the ABR, not only, they didn't just say you can't touch it. I thought they were also weighing in on the what the materials you would be using would be, or am I just misrecalling that?
No, you're right. They're not allowing us to do what is proposed on this. This was sort of one of the very first. In fact, you can see this started in September of last year. It's 5 months ago, and we're still trying to get approval. We started with a front porch that is a continuous hipped roof and continued the stone that is on the house. So that just wrapping around in a very similar way to what we did in the rear. That was, so in that very first meeting, I think both Wendy and Bill asked that we keep the front porch and just step back the new. So they, very early on said that we need to keep this historic fabric, but go ahead and do the porch, just step it back.
What does
Fast
that mean?
forward to
What does stepping back mean?
it means, so the sort of the blue outline there, Wade,
Mhm. Yes.
would come out 6 inches forward of
Oh, okay.
the porch next to it, the little
Gotcha.
extension. And then we went back, and I don't remember the dates, somebody can chime in, but the next meeting, if memory serves, that was no longer an option to set that back. And that was Bill Child's recommendation initially. And then they kind of retract that. And then it just seemed to, we just got further and further apart on how to handle this.
So you're proposing to continue the stone across the front, and what would the floor be?
I think it ought to be stone, but it could be wood if Jim would allow it. I think from my aesthetic standpoint, having that continuity would be more ideal.
Okay.
And typically when you have a stone wall base to a porch, you have a stone top, but not always. I mean, you could do, there's probably examples in the village of both.
Okay. So I feel very uncomfortable delving in all these questions because this is so far beyond what I truly understand, all the architectural issues you're talking about. So let me cut to maybe the question you could help me most on, which is our code says that if in addition to or exterior alteration of an existing historically significant property is proposed, the applicant shall bear the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that the proposed addition or alteration is consistent with historically significant features of the structure, such that its historically significant features shall be preserved. So can you help us understand, in your professional opinion, what about this is consistent with historically significant features, such that historically significant features shall be preserved?
Yeah, maybe that's the fundamental difference. The porch that he has now that the ARB deems historically significant is poor design. I mean, put very simply, it's off center. If you look at a photo, it's super quirky. So I'm making a recommendation to make a porch that's more appropriate for this house. It's kind of like in the most extreme fashion, Wade, if I were dealing with an Italianate front porch on a Craftsman house and it wasn't even a good Italianate design, do I need to keep it because that's what's there, or can I actually refer to, and I don't know the clause in the Chagrin ordinance, but there is a clause in there that says to make things complementary, I think is the word that they use.
Yeah, compatible in scale, material, and character with the design of the subject property.
I'm
This-
leaning more heavily on that.
Compatible
Sentence.
scale material. So again, I've heard lots of discussion of what's called a four square. That's the historic significance of this house is because it is an example of what's called a four square house. Is that correct?
It's historically significant in Chagrin sheerly because it's more than 50 years old. So anything over 50 years old in Chagrin is historically significant.
And is it your opinion that what you're trying to do would make this, would again, I'm looking at consistent with historically significant features?
Yes,
And it includes the placement of the dormer, the dormer above the porch roof that you're proposing. And you believe the materials that you're suggesting are consistent with, again, historically significant features of the structure.
yes. I mean, it's a force, if you go around any four square here in Chagrin or here, you know, in Ohio or wherever, you're gonna find something very similar to my initial design. Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a porch that looks like his current porch.
And same as to the materials, what you suggest in the materials you don't think is out of style or out of place with the four square porch that you're designing.
Material wise, yeah, we're building a porch. Do you mean, can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking, I tend to, when I struggle with a matter, I just look for the words that were given to us by counsel.
Right.
And I'm just looking at, again, applicant bearing the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that the proposed addition or alteration is consistent with the historically significant features of the structure, such that historically significant features shall be preserved. So if this house has been deemed to be historically significant, by preserving by presenting the roof line that you've proposed, the single dormer, and using the materials that you're proposing, are you saying that the stone is consistent or would be consistent with historically significant features? Or even in the language that you said you're more comfortable with, shall be compatible in scale, material, and character with the design of the subject property. I'm just trying to get from you as
that I can say unequivocally, yes. The way you're phrasing the first one is a little bit more difficult to understand or address, I guess.
Yeah, I'm just reading from the applicant has the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that the proposed addition or alteration is consistent with the historically significant features of the structure, such that historically significant features shall be preserved. So I'm just trying to understand, A, what are the historically significant features of the structure? It sounds like it's a four square, it's over 50 years old. And I'm trying to understand if stone or whatever you're presenting as the material, in your opinion, is consistent with the historic nature of this house.
I think that the trickiness lies in there's three columns of this rock face block on the front of this porch.
Mm-hmm.
That don't feel to me, just in my opinion, appropriate for this house.
That are currently there.
Everything above that, we are doing the exact same or in the same materials.
Mhm.
It's from that level down. I mean, you drive by it right now. Doesn't it look awkward as hell?
Yeah, what you're saying is already there. What's awkward to you is currently there. You're not proposing to add it.
Right. I'm like trying to fix it. I'm trying to fix this house so that we
Okay.
can stop looking at.
Can
But-
I ask a question? So in terms of the timeline of this,
This is Lisa Kramer, by the way.
right, sorry. There was a previous discussion and a previous approval when the addition was added. And a historic significance report from the state or from the expert architect historian. Are we looking at getting is there something else that's coming on this? I mean, are we getting another report from another HSR report, or is it, I mean, because they had this in 2018 and they allowed the addition was allowed. So we're not getting any new information, or nothing has changed since that report, right?
This is Jim Dustin. There have now been 3 reports. There was the report that we received when we purchased the home after it was redone. That was the 2018 report.
Mm-hmm.
There was one done, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, 6-7 months ago, where they agreed with the materials that we should continue. And then lo and behold, there was one done probably 2 or 3 months ago, 4 months ago, that, was completely different.
And who did that report? Who's doing those reports, Jim? Is that the village, or who's doing those?
Those were all, to my knowledge, they were all, well, at least 2 of them were paid for by the village. Phil, I think it was the same organization.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. This is Phil Eckenrode. The reports were prepared by Ms. Sloan, the same expert who looked at this 2.5 years ago. And there is you will get a sense from the minutes of the board meetings recently, where there's, I don't know if they always do this, but they seem to be going out of their way to kind of address the 2018 comments in her report by this is a historically significant property. This is a historically significant property. Because the last report they have on record from before we got involved said, if you double the footprint of the house, it kills the historical significance of it. And again,
So that's in one of these 3 reports. That's in the 2018.
2018.
yeah, and that one was exhibit Rob D.
Yeah, I
to,
think we read that.
yeah,
Okay.
exhibit D.
Let me interject something for a second, just it'll help everybody, I think. Alice Sloan is here tonight and she will be testifying, so
Okay.
she can explain her reports if you like, rather than having Phil or Jim, have to try and struggle through
Good.
what she said. Yeah,
Good.
she'll explain it. And
I thought we were
everybody
doing
can
a pretty
ask
good
her
job, dude.
What's that?
I thought we were doing a pretty good job.
That, you don't
No
want
comment.
my answer to that.
Dale, you're not sworn in, so don't answer that.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry to jump all over the board. Thanks, Lisa, for jumping in. Is there anybody else who has questions? I would like to hear about these reports. I don't know which of those we have or not. I don't think we have the one that was recently done, but are there any other questions from the board before we turn over to perhaps Alice next? But any other questions?
Wait, before we turn it over to Alice, Dominic Rabari, our system building inspector, was going to speak to some of the procedures, because the letter that you got from Phil Eckenrode raised some points that we didn't think accurately stated what happened. So we were going to ask him to explain that. There's a few points. It's got nothing to do with what you want to hear from Alice. It's more of a process issue.
No, that's fine. That's great. The more we hear, the better.
Okay.
So let's turn it over then.
Unless
Dominic's on, I think.
Well, unless the other board members have questions of anybody. who's
Yeah, I
presenting.
guess you're right. I don't know. I didn't hear any, but does anybody else have any questions of anyone who's spoken thus far?
I do, yeah. And
Okay.
I'm Brian Drum, I'm a board member. And I apologize if this is redundant, but I think this would just be really helpful for me in clarifying the current state of the situation. I'll take it from the top down, basically. Because as I read the information I got before the meeting, plans were approved with the stipulation that the materials use wood rather than concrete, right? So, and I feel like we're looking at plans now that are maybe, as Pantuso said, were original plans and have changed since then. So I wanted to clarify, is it permitted now to change the gabled roof to a hip roof? Or is it a requirement that the gable stay and that the extension to the left be set back and only that portion of the roof be hipped?
I am not sure that answer.
Becky, are you
Well,
there?
Let me-
Yeah.
That question wasn't part of what occurred at the meeting that they appealed on this one for. If you look at the minutes from November 16th, the motion dealt with the existing railing, and it dealt with using vertical or horizontal lattice on the front and sides of the porch and maintaining the existing structure. So that issue was not part of that particular meeting issue.
Well, maintaining the existing structure would be keeping that gable
In the
roof.
gable, right, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's what's currently been approved right now, with the stipulation that the material for the foundation or the support for the porch be wood rather than stone.
Right.
And does that also then mean that the block, the Cantelli block, is to be maintained
yes,
and relocated to the left side, the third pier, I think current center pier be relocated to the left side? Was that approved?
I believe, Dale, I don't remember. I thought our latest approval was leave the existing porch as it is, find Cantelli block, which went out of business, but there is another company that's making it for that last pier on the, our new pier on the far left.
Okay, but then the fill material between them would be wood and not the stone facade that's used around the rest of the perimeter of the property, right?
Agree.
Okay.
I
And so
believe
the-
that to be true, yes.
I
So
can-
which,
To help clarify what Becky was saying, she's correct that at the time of the ABR meeting, the testimony was that you couldn't find that stone material again. After the meeting, Willie Naylor researched it and actually somebody, I think in Indiana, that could supply that product.
So I could screen share the meeting minutes from November 16th, if that would help clarify. Wade, if you'd like me to do that, I could do that.
Sure.
Okay, hold on. All right, so I'll try to, oops. Hold on.
Yeah, there's happened, after they made that motion, I had asked to clarify what they meant by maintaining the existing structure. And they added that back into their minutes based on how they approved it in whenever they met next, I don't remember the date. But that's what the last full paragraph is about, because it's not part of the November 16 minutes in the audio file for the December 7th meeting.
Dale, I've got that on the screen now if you wish to review it.
Yeah, the paragraph that says summation motion by King, second by Childs, that's the one where they made their
Hey,
motion.
Dale? Dale, is he cutting out further too?
Yeah,
You're cutting in and out. He can't hear what you're saying.
Okay, let me try it again. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my iWatch was binging, maybe that affected it.
Okay.
But the last paragraph, it starts with this revised summation. And that was something that was a request that we had even before they voted on this issue, was to ask them what they meant by maintaining the existing structure. And that's where they added those points. But those points were not added during the meeting in November. They were added at the meeting in December.
Oh, okay.
December 7th, where they clarified what was meant by maintaining existing structure.
Right.
I've got that on the screen right now.
So to piggyback on what Brian was saying, this is Lisa Kramer. The point is that this is what is currently been approved by the ABR. It's the applicant's position that they want to go back, right, Becky, to the proposal that was originally submitted, and that's the whole purpose of their appeal.
Correct. I think I would, yes, I would prefer if we could get rid of the porch that's there, that's deemed historically significant. I'm sorry, Alice Sloan, you're probably cringing at my words, but I don't think it's done in good design. There's all of these issues. And I think Jim would prefer if, you know, it's consistent with the rest of the house, that we have one cohesive design. We tried to, through a number of iterations, you know, I think appease the ARB, and it, yeah, is diluting the end result, I think, pretty severely. But this might be a good time to bring Alice Sloan into the mix.
Well, I think we had Dominic first.
Right, we did.
So
Yeah,
let's-
I was kind of waiting for that. I think the biggest topic here is what porch design fits historical significance, you know, whether this house is now historically significant anymore after the addition is, again, something we'll hear about later. But has anybody had a conversation in collaboration with ARB and potentially other expert architect or historically preservation specialist to give options to the Dustins on, these are options, you know, outside of ARB, come in, and has that been done, that anybody provided a solution to this front porch other than keeping the gable where it is? You know, did that ever happen? I'm just confused on that. No, I'm assuming no.
Other than what Becky has been saying, right? You're saying.
Well, just, I guess, you know, they're saying, you know, no, and I just was wondering if you brought an expert historic preservation person in to speak with, in collaboration with the Dustins, Becky, and the board, ABR board, on here are all different options that would be historically compatible for this house.
Rachel, what typically happens is the consultants to the board, George and Phil, fill that kind of role.
Okay.
I don't know whether they had any discussions outside of meetings on that or not.
Right, they weren't in the minutes. That's why I was
No.
asking.
No.
Okay.
May I speak? This is Jim Dustin. I do think we've tried numerous times to come up with a design that fits the ARB's guidelines, or that adheres to the numerous requests that they put on us relative to the porch. I think, as Becky indicated, a full-scale front porch that runs across the entire house is more than consistent with at least 80% of the houses in Chagrin Falls that are similar to ours. They all seem to have front porches that run the width of the house, and everything else from there seems to be a lot of agita. And what you see here is Becky's best estimation of what would accomplish what they wanted. It's not what we wanted, clearly, but this is what they approved based on their beliefs of what is historically significant or not. But whether it's architecturally appropriate is a different question.
And Can I just chime in one other statement? Because I think, and sorry if my graphics are imperfect, I'm showing that blue outline as this is what was existing. But if you can see kind of behind that in this proposed design that's on the screen now, which is our initial and what we would, I think, like to get a blessing on, does not have a front facing gable. It is just a hipped roof. It is not treasuring the existing porch that's there now. It is creating something that I feel is appropriate for an American Foursquare. So I just want to clear that up because it's kind of, it's confusing. And then that's making it more confusing, I think. So, and we had this landscape wall that the ARB was vehement against. We dropped that early, haven't even readdressed that, but yeah.
Becky, are you aware of other Foursquare houses in the village that have the front porch all the way across with the dormer above?
Yeah, I think probably, and just drop the dormer because I think that is a separate issue, and
Okay.
it's only confusing because when you say dormer, I think maybe it's getting muddled with the porch, and the dormer's
Yeah.
up top on the third floor and the
Right.
porch down below. So just for clarity's sake, let's not talk about the dormer. I don't know if I can say 100%, but I bet every Foursquare in Chagrin has this full front porch.
And if you were to guess on the number of Foursquares, are there 100? Are there 5? I mean, what?
In Chagrin, there's probably, 4, 5.
Okay.
I don't know. I know the Chagrin housing stock pretty well, but I don't know it perfectly. There's somewhere between 4 and 8.
Okay, gotcha. So is it safe to say is your biggest issue the porch not being able to run across the entire front, or the materials with which you'll build? Are they the same? If you're going to build across the front, you really think it makes sense to have the stone facade?
Are you talking to me, Wade?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I think that the crux of this problem is the ARB has deemed this little bit quirky porch sacred. And if you asked me to design an appropriate porch for a Foursquare, it would be not the porch that's there. It would be this design that you see that's straight across. I mean, I drew it the first time. This is my first effort, my best effort, right? This is what I feel like is appropriate for this house. But I think the difference is, one is historic preservation. Let's keep everything that was ever built more than 50 years ago exactly as it is, or historically compatible. And those are two different things. And I think what is making this tricky situation.
Can I clarify one thing, Becky?
Yes.
You said that this is your best iteration, but correct me if I'm wrong, because when we've talked about doing this as a full-scale front porch, the center point of that porch, that peak, would be in the center of the house, not offset, correct?
No, there would be no, yes, but there's no front facing peak. So there's no gable end coming out, which is typical of a Foursquare. And if you look at the roofs on the rest of the house, like they have that hipped form. So it's just it's just roofs that kind of encapsulate. There's no front facing gable, there's no rake, there's none of those, kind of details. On this house, with the exception, they've got this shed roof on the front, which doesn't, I think maybe even Alice will agree that that's kind of a odd duck, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other questions before I want to get Dominic, who's in the queue, to answer some of the procedural issues or give us some facts there. But any other questions? I mean, we can come back with more questions, but any obvious questions anyone on the board wants to ask right now of anyone who's spoken thus far?
Yeah, I just want one clarification. This is Jim Holdren. Jim, Dustin, you mentioned earlier that you were going to do sandstone for the floor. And I can't remember, did you say, but you're fine with the wood as long as you can extend the porch, or you still want to do the sandstone?
In my best case scenario, I want a house that is consistent from a materials perspective. I would much prefer to do sandstone. But I need to get this project finished. We're 2 years into a project that now cannot be finished, meaning I cannot do any more work. I've got an eyesore that's been sitting there for now almost 7 months. So we've got to come to some agreement soon, because no one wants to see what's sitting there for another 1.5 years, frankly.
And Jim, the other sandstone is in the back patio.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other sandstone other than that patio?
No.
Okay. And you also would prefer the stone front as this picture depicts, which is along the existing house. Is that correct as well?
Yes, it would make everything consistent.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other
And
questions?
that was my second question. Did the architectural review board, because the stone facings on the rest of the house, did they give any input on what should be on the face of the porch?
I believe they approved, and Becky can confirm this, that they would allow a wood front porch with lattice work on the front.
Yeah, they specifically said no to the stone facing, to any of the stone there. I'm sorry, Becky, is that correct? I mean, it was
Yeah.
wood and lattice.
Right, and I asked because I think the house is, in a 4-square design, kind of heavy and bulky. If we could at least do like a wood panel or something heavier, because I feel like the porch that's there now looks kind of diminutive, like it looks spindly. So I was just trying to, if we can't do stone, can we do a solid panel or some sort of paneling detail? And I think that was rejected as an idea as well.
I think that's, I think I recall that as well. Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Jim. Any other questions of those who have spoken before that jump out to you right now? We can obviously ask questions later. Anything else? Okay, let's go over to Dominic. Dominic's been admitted, I
wait.
believe.
Wait, can you hold on 1 second?
Sure.
We still need to make sure there isn't somebody who wants to speak on behalf of the appeal that hasn't already spoken.
I was kind of holding that to the end. I thought we'd go through Dominic and then Ms. Sloan, and then sort of open it up after we took all the facts, but however you want, however you think.
Well, we probably don't have anybody, because all we have left in attendees is Matt Duff, Barb Christian, presumably, and Amanda Barretto. So it's probably a moot point.
Okay. Well,
certainly could go to Dominic.
Yeah, let's go to Dominic, and then we'll include Ms. Sloan, and then we'll open it up to anyone else and make sure everyone has had a chance. So let's go to Dominic. Dominic is in. If you could be sworn in then, please, Dale.
Sure. Okay, Dominic, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Just my comments and some notes that I made, they mostly, actually all of them pertain to the siding and window issue appeal, not really directed towards any of the porch conversation. just to let you guys know before I start, if we're not on the siding appeal yet.
Sure, we gave Phil a little latitude to talk, so let's take it all now. So that's fine.
Okay, I guess a couple of things we want to point out from the building department, our side, is their initial submission. Well, to start originally, there was no permits to work on the house at all. To begin with, they have the garage and the rear deck permits to do work on. And the issue that arose in the first September meeting when they submitted their plans for the front porch were the pictures that were presented in front of the board where they first saw the stone veneer that had shown to be wrapped around the house. And that's when the questions arose on, well, how did this stuff get there? And that brought up, the following 3 meetings from the October 5th and the October 19th meeting, where the architect, the contractor, and the homeowners were all asked to clarify, why is work being done on the house that they didn't approve or be presented for approval. And that's also when the ABR noticed the stone veneer and they questioned what was going on. The ABR didn't notice the siding at the time. And then in the following 3 meetings, I also noted that, nobody ever said anything about the siding in general. But once everybody got past the stone veneer, and the ABR decided, well, we're not going to make you rip it off. You can keep the stone veneer. And then they actually talked about the porch in the November 19th meeting and approved plans. That is around the time where I believe Steve King had then called the building department and asked what was going on with the siding. And that is when we got the report that the siding was being changed. So I guess the inaccuracies of some of the things we heard is that the siding and the windows was always part of the plan, when in reality, there was no plan to work on the house until the porch was presented to us.
So just to clarify, a previous owner is the one who built the addition on the back of the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they were using a different architecture. They were using Paint and Pain.
Yes.
At least to build. And Paint and Pain, no one ever had building permits to put the windows and the siding on the previous owner didn't have building permits?
Paint and Pain had permits to do the addition on the back of the house, and their permits only included the addition. They were not touch the original portion of the house.
Okay.
Siding and windows.
But did ABR had no occasion to opine on the windows or the siding on the addition to the historic house?
I don't believe so, because they weren't, there's a line where the original house starts and the addition begin, or where the original house ends and the addition begins. And you can tell the difference because the siding was different. They did not match the siding exactly.
But they wouldn't have needed approval. So they're adding an addition to a historic feature. They didn't need any approval in the permits for the windows or the siding on the addition?
They did have approval for the hardy board. They didn't give a size dimension, but they did say that they were putting a cement fiber boarding on the siding. That was part of their plans.
And what about the windows?
And I believe the windows that they put in were approved. But only to the addition.
They were vinyl windows.
So is ABR taking the position that the addition can have different siding than the front part now?
I'm not sure I can say what they.
Yeah, I don't recall a record of that. I'm just confused as to how you have a report that says it's a historic structure. You double the size of it, and somebody approves windows and siding for that. And now it's becoming an issue on the front of the house, if I'm understanding correctly. And I don't mean to be blaming, or I'm just trying to understand facts. So is that accurate? Somehow they Payne and Payne didn't do anything wrong as to the back of the house with respect to the windows or the siding. Is that fair or not?
No, it wasn't around the 2018, so I'm not sure, how
So-
that came about. So maybe Harry can.
Harry can
Yeah,
answer that.
Harry,
answer that
Rob, or
question.
Dale. Yeah, Harry, Rob, or Dale, how does that work when they're adding something to a historic structure did they get approval from someone? And if not, why not? Was it they just got
Right.
lucky or what happened?
Let me swear Harry in so he can speak.
Great.
Do solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Harry, so please help me understand.
All right, so the addition on the back of the house, the addition in the windows and the siding that are on the back of the house was approved by the ABR back in 2019. There was no talk about doing anything to the existing part of the house. So yes, there was 2 types of siding on the house. Answer your question?
Yes, and ABR is now objecting to this, and I just want to make sure I understand factually. The siding on the front of the house is the same as the siding that's on the back of the house?
On the partial side of the house, you got the blue siding, which is like and it's a artificial material like a lap siding. That's the blue siding. Then you have the white siding. The white siding was approved, well, it was a different color back in 2019. They painted it just recently. That was all approved in the back.
So I can clarify too, the party board siding was intended to be extended across the rest of the house to make it look uniform because there's 6-inch hardy board. Is that correct, Becky? On the new addition, and I don't know what was on the front of the house. It was 3 inches, maybe 3.5 inches in diameter. It looked utterly ridiculous.
And that's where the confusion comes in at, because nobody ever mentioned about re-siding the whole house. They just did it.
All right. Anybody else from the board have a question on that?
Well, on those same lines, what's the architectural review board? What do they recommend? Different sized siding for the house, for the front versus
Front.
That comes up in the second part of our meeting. And that's what also was appealed by the Dustins, because the Architectural Review Board wanted the siding that was not approved, that is wider than the siding that exists on the front and whatever remains on the sides, if any. They wanted it to be the same size, the smaller width. That's what's being appealed for the second part of your meeting.
I could read that motion if you like, Dale.
Sure.
So at the January 4th, 2022 ABR meeting, the ABR motioned to, regarding the siding, they approved a motion to, 1, remove the replacement siding on the historic portion of the house to be replaced with siding to match the historic width typical of Chagrin Falls American Foursquare to be determined by prospectus, and to add second floor band detail as noted in the historic image with siding to be presented to ABR for approval. So they're awaiting approval of the conforming siding. Number 2, to install brackets and modillions at roof eaves to match historic with dimensions to be match the historic features of the house with dimensions to be presented to the ABR for approval. And number 3, to remove vinyl replacement windows installed by owner at the facade with owner to present windows to ABR for approval. And that was the motion that was passed on January 4th. And that was the subject of the second administrative appeal, which was filed on January 10th.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, Rob, the ABR would like the front of the house to have different siding than the back of the house, 3 inches as opposed to 6 inches. They want different windows as opposed, the back of the house has vinyl windows and the front will not have vinyl windows, and they want some historic medallions replaced.
They want some brackets, medallions at roof eaves to match the historic nature of the house.
So I'm sorry.
So I don't know the true extent of the windows, whether it is just the vinyl material or whether it's vinyl and design or style. It says just to remove the vinyl replacement windows that were installed at the facade with owner to present new windows, to ABR that are concurrent with the historic nature of the house.
But again, ABR approved vinyl windows and the wider siding for the addition.
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, I want to clarify that. When the plans were presented, the plans showed the width of the siding to be the same on the original house as the addition, the part that they're saying is too wide. And I think that's where the confusion came from. And there's no indication in the minutes that there was any discussion about it being different.
Dale, are you talking about on this most recent edition, or are you talking about in 2018, they thought it was going to be a narrower siding and it turned out to be a wider siding?
That's my understanding, the latter point. But again, there's nothing in the minutes one way or the other on it, because all we know is the drawing from back then showed the width being the same on what was the existing original house versus the addition.
And what about the windows?
That I can't speak to. The only thing that I do know is Payne and Payne had an indication that the windows would match the existing, if I remember right, but I can't be positive on that.
Can I add one bit of information relative to the windows? The windows that we were replaced were leaking. They were actually replacement windows. They were not original windows. They were some sort of vinyl/wood double pane windows. We replaced them with what was exactly consistent with the addition, simply for uniformity purposes. Would not have been my choice had I done the addition to begin with, but that's what we were left with, and in order to match them, that's what we did.
Okay, any other questions? I know Ms. Sloan's probably been dying to chime in on a number of these things, but any other questions of anybody who's spoken thus far from the board? Okay, I think we're ready to hear from Alice Sloan. If Katie, if you could admit her, please, and Dale, if you could, when she's on, administer the, I keep on saying the oath, swear her in, please.
Okay, I see Alice.
Yes,
Alice,
she's on.
okay, could you raise
Hello.
your right hand? Hi, Alice. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So Alice, it would be helpful to me if you could just, I don't think we have the most recent report, and you don't have to go verbatim through the reports. I'd like to make sure we have all three of the reports, but perhaps take us through each of the reports and sort of your major conclusions as a starting point.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Just so that you all are aware, we have given that report to Phil Eckenrode and his clients, so they have it. It wasn't presented in advance to the board.
You're talking about the most recent report, Dale?
Correct.
Okay. And Alice, I don't mean to take you off of your, you can testify however you want to, but when you talk, it would be helpful for us to understand from you as an expert kind of, and as the author, as I understand the three reports, your findings and go from there.
Sure. If I may refer to the most recent report that's revised, well, it's dated January 21st, revised January 27th, and presented to the appellant. That does also address the 2018 report and the memo on the siding that was requested in December.
Okay.
So
I'm screenshotting that now.
Hey, Allison,
Yes.
while we're pulling that up, it might be helpful. Could you just introduce yourself and
Yes.
sort of your background? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I am Alice Sloan. I am an associate AIA and associate to the American Institute of Architects and an Association for Preservation Technology recognized professional. I have worked with Perspectus since fall of 2015, 2016, when Chambers, Murphy and Burge, the predecessor historic arm of Perspectus, merged with Perspectus, if that makes sense. I have a degree, a Master of Science in Historic Preservation from the University of Pennsylvania. And I
if
have
could,
over.
is Perspectus only historic architect?
No, they're a full service architecture firm located in Cleveland, downtown, on East 9th. And they especially service the hospital sector, the what is it called? The country club sector, as well as other projects as they come up. And we have a campus and cultural division as well. That's kind of arm in arm with the historic architecture studio. Okay. This report was also reviewed by my principal of the firm, Elizabeth Corbin Murphy. You'll see her name up there. She is a fellow with the American Institute of Architects, and she's a recipient of the AIA Ohio Gold Medal Award and past president of AIA Ohio and past chair of the AIA National Historic Resources Committee. And we both meet federal qualifications 48 FR 44716. Myself in history and architectural history, and Elizabeth in architecture, historic architecture, history, architectural history, and historic preservation planning. So just so you know, this has also been taken up the next level for review. It's not just solely a report that I constructed. It's really Perspectus has reviewed this in full with the village. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So I guess first of all, the background is presented at the top, and just that Perspectus was brought on as a professional consultant to support the village's response to appeals 1 and 2. And this memo presents that the building at 289 North Street is a historically significant property according to the most recent iteration of the ordinance. Now, I want to just emphasize that because the 2018 report, the historic significance report from 2018 was under a different ordinance, was under the old ordinance. Okay, so the new ordinance that applies to the work with the current property owner, the appellant, refers to a building being considered historically significant if it's over 100 years old, as this building is. It dates to 1918. Okay, and Perspectus has included assessment of the appropriateness of the specific ABR comments and decisions. And the assessment is supported by the village's ordinance, as I just explained, the most recent iteration. And that is supported by the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties through the village's design guidelines, which have been referred to tonight as far as all the addressing the referencing to the American Foursquare. That is one of the components addressed in the design guidelines, but I will be presenting other components as well. Okay, so there are also photographs of comparable American Foursquares provided at the end of the memo for context to show the relative uniqueness of the porch configuration on 289 North Street. And the typical narrow siding of the American Foursquare buildings in the village. But the brackets themselves at the roof line are unique in the village. Okay, so there are definitions included in the exhibits at the end of this memo, including definitions presented in the ordinance and the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties rehabilitation. But right up in front, we have provided the key definitions in the ordinance, and that includes the definition of preservation, which is explained in the ordinance and supports the retention of material in addition to form and integrity. So if historic materials must be replaced, the new materials shall match the historic materials being replaced. And then preservation is cited in a couple other locations in the ordinance if you move on to page 2 of the memo. And at the very top there, that the most important line that I have myself highlighted in that first paragraph on page 2 is that the new material shall closely match the material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities. Okay, so this revision, you're probably wondering why we had to supply a revision. It's because this revised memo includes reference to the 2019 drawings that were prepared for the previous owner by a previous architect builder. And as Mr. Dale Markowitz has stated earlier, that the drawings that were presented in 2019 are not what was constructed in terms of the siding width. What was presented in 2019 is going to match the narrow width of the historic section of the house. But in fact, the siding was constructed in a 6-inch width. So that's the key there. Sources consulted was everything provided by the village. I myself, accompanied by representatives from the village, visited the site on December 20th from the right of way. And then a couple days later, with the knowledge and permission from the owner and the owner's attorney, I was able to go onto the property and get some up close pictures, which you will see later in this report. I also visited a typical American four squares in the village, and those pictures are included at the end of the report. And there is also reference to, as I said, the Village of Chagrin Falls design guidelines and national preservation standards, both as detailed in the National Park Service's preservation briefs and the National Park Service's interpreting the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So if we can move to the pretty pictures on page 4. I hope this comes through pretty clearly. This is the oldest picture we have of 289 North Street. This is from the building card that is in the Cuyahoga County Archives. And the building card was dated 1964. Now, it's not for sure that that picture is from 1964, but it's around circa 1964. And you can see the narrow profile siding. You can see the historic gable-fronted wood porch structure with historic rock-faced cast stone piers and historic wood railing extending from grade to the top of the cast stone pier. There are also those historic wood brackets at the roof line. And as I mentioned before, there's light-colored narrow profile siding. And if you move down to the next photograph, is from the 2018 Prospectus Historic Significance Report. And this shows, again, the gable-fronted wood porch with those 3 historic rock-faced cast stone piers, but now there's a non-historic wood railing. There's still the historic wood brackets at the roof line, and there's a light-colored narrow profile replacement siding, which we referred to in the 2018 memo as non-historic textured lap siding. And you can also see, this isn't in the caption, but in the 1964 photograph, that dormer at the 3rd floor has what appear to be 2 windows in it. And now in 2018, there is now a louvered vent. Okay, we can move to the next photograph. This is also from the 2018 report. It's a little bit closer. You can see the narrow profile siding, and the historic rock-faced cast stone foundation appears to have been painted in this elevation by the previous owner. And then you can scroll down to the next picture from 2018 that shows the chimney and how the cast stone foundation wraps around that brick chimney, the base of the brick chimney. Okay. And then the next picture shows what we took from the right of way. So it's kind of really bright. It's in the full sun. So the color's a little washed out, but that's pretty much what the 289 North Street looks like currently, with the replacement siding has been painted gray. Not sure when that happened. And the replacement siding by the appellant has been put on the wide siding has been put on the sides of the house. And then there's the new garage in the back that has a hipped dormer that does not match the shed dormer roof of the existing historically significant house. Okay, so what we did is we broke up the issue by each feature. This is just so we were all able to be on the same page as to what has changed on the house and from what it looked like in 2018. Now, this goes above and beyond what addressing what the appeals are, but this is just so that there's no question. We talk about the porch, the dormer, and then if you move on to the next page, we talk about the siding, which we can get into more in depth. But then there's also talk of the soffit with the brackets, the windows, the side entry, the gutters and downspouts, and the landscaping. So the issue is all presented there, and then it goes into assessment of what the ABR comments and decisions were. After that assessment, there is discussion of the support of the ABR's comments and decisions based on the design guidelines for Chagrin Falls and the national standards. And then, of course, there are the pictures of the comparable foursquares. So I suppose we should go right back to that porch. Although I think there is a full understanding now after this discussion tonight of what was existing, what's proposed, and what's desired by the appellant ultimately. Stop me if you think I should address that again, or we can move right on to the siding.
I think you can keep going.
Okay.
Let me know what page you want me to go to, Alice.
Okay, yeah. I mean, let's just talk about the siding one more time, because that is the focus of the second appeal. So page 8. Okay. So we have, yes, okay. As was discussed, what was proposed, or what the issue is that there's been removal cover up of the historic house's existing painted blue-gray narrow exposure drop lap replacement siding, which is reportedly a medium density fiberboard, or lovingly referred to as MDF. It's a composite wood that dates to the mid-1990s. And it was painted blue-gray in 2019, reportedly. And then it was replaced with new white-colored 6-inch exposed standard lap textured siding that appears to match. Now, this is what we're saying, the reportedly ABR approved 2019 rear addition fiber cement siding, which was painted in 2021, and 2, the reportedly ABR approved white siding on the new garage. But as I explained earlier, that the pane and pane drawings illustrate that the siding exposure on the new rear addition will match the historic house's existing narrow exposure replacement siding. But it appears that siding with 6-inch exposure standard lap was installed on the rear addition without the ABR approval. Okay, so moving on to the windows, page 9. The January 4th ABR audio recording indicated that the existing non-historic replacement windows were replacement Anderson windows, part wood, part vinyl with a built-in brick mold. These non-historic replacement windows were replaced by the current owner with vinyl windows to match the vinyl windows installed on the addition, which were not approved previously by the ABR.
Although that's
Okay.
not an issue before us, is it? It's the siding and the porch.
I thought the windows were also part, they were brought up in the letter by the appellant's attorney.
The windows are part of the final motion that's being appealed from January 4th.
Okay.
Okay, now where do I begin the rest of the assessment? I think it might be helpful to go right to the design guidelines and the national standards. Does that make sense? Stop me if I shouldn't skip over that as quickly. It's just a lot to go through if we go through every comment.
Can you do an overview of how that applies?
Okay. All right, I'm going to do a summary of the September 21st, October 5th, October 19th, and November 16th minutes before the appeal was filed, if that's okay. All right. So beginning with the September 21st ABR minutes that were available to Prospectus. After review, this decision with the Pantusa architecture drawings dated September 1st, 2021 available to the ABR is appropriate, as the drawings only indicate alterations to the porch, dormer, and side entry. The drawings indicate that the house already has the veneer stone foundation and landscaping, which was not true. That was put on by the appellant. The drawings do not indicate siding replacement, addition of veneer stone foundation at the chimney, obstruction, removal of brackets at the soffits, window replacements, or gutter and downspout replacement. So it appears that ABR requested that the owner appear at the next meeting to explain. And so there was a motion to revise and resubmit. The ABR minutes dated October 5th. The ABR requested the owner appear again before the ABR. Although no vote was taken, there was a summation to revise and resubmit. This decision with the Pantuso architecture drawings dated 9/1/2021, not revised and resubmitted as appropriate. October 19th, 2021, the ABR motion passed was to revise and resubmit. Let's see, Pantusa suggested to extend the porch left, but still maintain the roof. Pantusa explained that they would make a roof to the left, so the existing historic roof would be the primary focus and recess the back. Keeping the stone piers and trying to find a corner post of similar air block. This decision with the 9/1/2021 drawings not revised and resubmitted as appropriate. November 16th, the ABR motion passed was to change the height of the existing railing to what it was originally, which should be lower because there was a notch in the stone piers where the wood railing used to go. Using vertical or horizontal lattice on the front and sides of the porch and maintaining the existing structure. So that is clarified as was discussed earlier in this tonight. That was discussed and clarified December 7th. The goal of the ABR approved porch is to better match the original wood porch, cover some of the contemporary stone from view, maintain the historic piers, and lower the wood railing to more clearly match the original height. This decision with the Pantusa architecture drawings dated November 5th, 2021, available to the ABR is appropriate, as the new stone veneer has an adverse effect on the historic house. Now, ABR could have required removal of the contemporary stone and preservation of the existing porch without an extension, but instead decided to work with the owner for a mutually agreeable solution. Note that the ABR has the ability to compromise on the historic stone foundation and piers. However, that part of the decision would not be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Rob, excuse me, can you scroll down? We're out of sync here. Thank you.
Okay, so then we had audio links to review from December 21st and January 4th. Again, both ABR decisions were found to be appropriate. December 21st, the ABR motion was to have prospectus examine the property for the front porch changes and the siding question in general, with specific references to historical part of the house and the new part of the house, and to have prospectus review other American Foursquares in Chagrin Falls. Okay, January 4th, this is the motion passed to replace the siding on the historic portion of the house to match the smooth siding, historic narrow width of Chagrin Falls American Foursquares.
Hey, Alice,
And-
excuse me for a second. I just want to make sure I understand when each time it says is appropriate, that is your conclusion as the author of this report?
As prospectus's conclusion is that the ABR has made appropriate comments and appropriate decisions
Gotcha. Okay.
based
Thank you.
on what was presented to them
Gotcha.
at each of these meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, so there was also discussion of the motion was to also replace the brackets at the roof eaves, to remove the vinyl replacement windows on the historic portion of the house and replace with aluminum clad or wood windows and present it back to the ABR. Okay, I think, again, ABR has the ability to compromise on the historic stone foundation and piers. However, that part of the decision would not be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards. Okay, then we go through and address each issue specifically and how that should be viewed, I guess. Now, trying to think, I had some other notes that I was taking while I was hearing the facts presented earlier as well. I'm wondering if I should go through and talk to those now.
The one thing I'd love to have you address, if your notes indicates as such, is it was stated that in your 2019 report, maybe that's 18, I'm not sure.
2018.
That you had opined that the historic significance would be lost if the footprint was more than doubled. Is that accurate or not? Or what can you recall on that?
Well, there is a newer ordinance now that says a historically significant house or building or structure in the village is considered anything over 100 years old, end of story.
So you at no point have said that the if more doubling the footprint would lessen the significance or anything like that?
That would have been to the previous ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to also emphasize that I know there was some question as to Prospectus's response to the siding issue and how the recommendation, I guess, to the ABR was to approve the siding with conditions. But at that time, we did not have all the facts. We did not have access to the 2019 drawings of Pain and Pain, which clearly shows that the additions, the proposed addition was to have the matching profile and width of the historic section of the house. So I know it was said, I recall in one of the ABR meetings that it's not sufficient enough to say that you want to match the new garage with the rest of the house. That's not a good argument. The historic house needs to stand on its own. And I know there is this concern of and how to interpret. I'm sure this is going to be a question, how you rectify the historically significant features and the materials versus what's good design sense. And the fact is the ordinance and national, as supported by the village's design guidelines and national standards, champion the existing historic materials and design, not the idea of what an idealized style is. So I just wanted to make that clear. Does that make sense? Do you have questions
do
to
you have
that?
a site for that, Alice? Do you have a site for where you're seeing that in the code?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so that is back on
1146.
pages 1 and 2. So it's 114601 intent, 114604 standards of review, 114605 definitions.
Because I see the new material shall closely match the material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities.
Yes.
So closely match is, I guess, subject to potential interpretation, right? What that means.
It should be
Doesn't say
wood.
identically.
It should be wood and not stone, for example, on a porch floor.
Okay.
Let's see here. All right, I think I made my main responses to what was discussed earlier. If you'd like, we can go into the design guidelines, what was said in the Village of Chagrin Falls' design guidelines and in national standards, or
Sure.
we can address any questions you have up to this point.
Any questions from the board? I'd like you to go through those design guidelines, and I'd also like to see photos of the other property, the 4 squares that you said you saw in Chagrin.
Sure. Let's break and have some pictures.
Okay.
Let's go to page 18 and 19. So there's about 4 that I've included that I thought were comparable as far as historically sensitive American 4 squares in the village. And the first one is at 465 Bell Street. It is a full width porch. So this not full width porch at 289 North Street is special and unique. Again, this has the 465 Bell Street also has masonry piers in that cast stone that has been determined significant in the village. But there aren't roof brackets. So this roof brackets at 289 North Street are special and unique. The siding is also typically narrow, and the gutters and downspouts, which I'm going to throw in here, even though this has not been addressed by either the ABR or the owner, the gutters and downspouts are not copper. And the 289 North Street has been now has copper downspouts and gutters. 457 Bell Street is below that. Again, you can see the narrow profile siding there. This has a wood porch as well. And I believe that you can see back in the trees, there is that cast stone. And I think it might also be at the piers underneath the wood. I can't, oh yes, it's painted white piers, cast stone piers underneath the porch columns. Okay, next picture. 364 Bell Street, again, narrow profile siding, full width porch, which makes 289 North Street's porch unique. The cast stone piers, and here it's painted, and the wood porch. And there's also a shed roof on this dormer at the 3rd floor as well. Next photograph is 189 East Washington Street. Now this does not have the masonry piers at the porch itself, but it does have that cast stone it's been painted around the rest of the house, and it has the narrow profile siding and almost a full width porch. Okay, are there any questions about these photographs?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get my arms around is I earlier told the applicant or the appellant that, you know, they have by code, they have the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence the proposed addition or alteration is consistent with historically significant features of the structure, such that historically significant features will be preserved. So I'm trying to wrestle with your representation that unique is somehow good, as opposed to they can conform with what the other 4 squares in the village look like. Since it's consistent with historically significant features.
The historically significant features of that specific house.
Aren't they all 4 squares?
Yes, but I believe I'm reading the intent of that statement as the historically significant features of the particular house, not of type houses.
Okay, I see. And it's your belief that even though the other 4 squares have full porches, the fact that this one has a smaller porch makes it significant and unique.
Yes.
Even if that porch was not original to that house, which I think have no way of knowing right now, but.
Oh, it's the upper structure, that front gable and those columns, that is, I can tell you that is historic material. The deck itself has been replaced over time. And that railing, of course, you know, is not the historic railing, but that
the configuration of
and the configuration,
replacement
yes,
and all that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was it original?
I believe so, yes.
So they just always put the door right of center. It was just kind of quirky out of the gates.
Yeah, I didn't study the door itself. I studied the porch.
I'm just curious, like what the historic evolution of it might have been. It doesn't seem to make sense in its current state, in my belief.
I guess they like the beauty of the symmetry.
I still am a little bit unclear, Alice, on your, I understand everything you went through and the examples of the porches. I appreciate that. I'm still confused about what the offer to the appellant is on the structure of a porch? They have to keep it exactly as is,
No.
or I'm still confused. They can
The
expand it with
The
a
ABR has
tier?
decided, the ABR has decided that they can have a full width porch.
Okay,
The Secretary of the Interior standards would have begged to differ.
okay.
But it has to be set back. The porch can't be one uniform, it'll be recessed.
They have to keep the roof line of the existing porch.
As separate and distinct.
Right.
Is that not correct? I think that's what Becky said, that she'd have to push it back and not show it as one like these. It would be a separate, it would continue the line.
It would have
but
a
it'd be set
different
back.
roof line on the extension part with the third pier of the concrete, or that, the third pier, I'm assuming, to match the other two that are there with a different roof line and the wood floor.
That's the ABA's decision.
Okay.
I don't know if it's applicable, and I think this is really tricky, Alice, to speak on, but I think a lot of times, and maybe to some degree why we're here now, is, Alice, you have a very historic preservation accurate background. You are following your beliefs, and your company and everything are following the Secretary of Interior design standards, which is kind of the Bible of historic preservation. If I believe that Chagrin ARB does not follow that so strict.
Correct.
And they oftentimes Alice will make a report and the ARB will say, well, I disagree, and then have their own sort of take on something. Is that fair statements?
The ABR is generally more lenient in my experience than what national standards that are referenced in the Village of Chagrin Falls design guidelines would point to.
Alice, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think sometimes the ARB takes liberty, maybe arbitrarily so, to enforce more of those historic preservation ideals or less, well, not always, Alice. It turns out that there's some projects where it's more. So it's somewhat arbitrary in, their approach. And
in this specific case, we're looking at 289 North Street, and they are being much more lenient than the national standards that are referenced in their design guidelines.
Could I ask a question though, Alice? If you've shown us all these examples of the 4-square house with the porch, the full length of the front of the house, and what's on the table is constructing a porch that, keeps that existing smaller porch and then adds a piece that goes back and looks different. That seems to me that your ultimate endpoint will be a porch that's less in keeping with the historic configuration of these houses than the ones that already have the extended porch.
It also differentiates between what was historically there and what's new. I think there's an attempt there to distinguish the two pieces. So it's not, I don't want to say lying, but I'm saying lying. So it's not misrepresenting the historical evolution of the house.
I guess, that's what I wrestle with as well. I mean, so to that point, and to the uniqueness of the smaller porch, I mean, let's say if 100 years ago, they had decided that they wanted a round window, they put a round window in the front of the house, and everybody said, that looks awful, but it lasted for 100 years. Are we saying that round window would be replaced under this language because it's unique and it's historic and you can't, you should stay with it even though others say, I don't like the way that looks.
Yeah, it's the history of the house. It's about preservation of the materials and design and integrity and form of the existing house, not of other houses of the building type and style.
Okay.
So
Looks-
Alice, in your opinion, what would be a better outcome, an extended porch like this or an extended porch like the ARB is recommending, where neither one of them are matching what the house looked like 100 years ago?
I don't think I can comment on that because I am not the ABR. I can only comment on what was there historically and what the ordinance says that should be preserved.
Have you come across this before, where they actually make an addition to a porch where they keep the existing, but they add a new porch? So as they keep,
I have not personally come across this.
Alice, can I just ask
Yes.
one thing, please? And you referred
This is
to
Phil,
the,
by the way, right, Phil?
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Frick.
No, I
Yeah,
just want to keep straight because a lot of people talking, so thanks.
Sure. This is Phil Eckenrode. You made reference to the amendment to the ordinance, I believe in 2019, as kind of explaining why your November 2018 report, why you might have come out different now. I'm
Yes.
paraphrasing. Okay.
Yes.
But that, I believe you said 100 years old, end of story or period, but that's still just a presumption though, right? If a house is more than 100 years old, there's only a presumption that it's historically significant. It's not automatic. 114604D1. Provided any structure which is more than 100 years old shall be presumed to be a historically significant property. And any party asserting the structure is not, et cetera, the language that Mr. Frick read from earlier. So the fact that it's 100 years old, change the ordinance or not in 2019, that's still, we still have to look at the house as it is, right?
It's over 100 years old and it's historically significant to the village.
But it wasn't historically significant in 2018 under the previous ordinance.
I think it still was.
I'm sorry,
I
that was
just-
poorly, yeah, that was poorly worded on my part. What the initial submission was given in 2018 that led to you writing the report, you said that doubling the home's footprint and altering the 4 square form makes it ineligible, right? And obviously there was some revise and resubmit, right? But now if this exact same proposal that you said would have deemed it not historic would happen today because the ordinance has changed, that would still be fine?
I think I can't speak to the previous ordinance totally because I didn't review it before this session, honestly. I don't want to start speculating. I'm just reporting on what the ordinance says now.
And again, you're referring to to D1 to 114604 D1, which says any structure which is more than 100 years old shall be presumed to be historically significant property, and any party asserting that such structure is not shall bear the burden of proving the same by clear and convincing evidence. That's what you're referring to, Alice, is the change in the statute that in the ordinance it says if you're 100 years old, you're presumed to be historically significant property. Period.
Yes.
And Mr. Frick, just to be clear, I was pointing out, there was a statement made that, well, I know what I said in 2018, but there was an amendment to the ordinance after that, and that said, once it's 100 years old, end of question, period, done, historic. What I'm pointing out is I'm not sure exactly how the ordinance was changed in 2019. I don't have the legislative history, but what I do know is that the ordinance as written today includes that D1 language that you read, which is a presumption. A presumption is different than an absolute, right? So as you pointed out at the beginning of this call, yes, it is our burden before you today, right?
Right.
And that presumption is applied to a house that's more than 100 years old. But the code has to recognize that there are obviously instances where 100-plus-year-old house is no longer historically significant. And we submit that this is one of them. For all the reasons Ms. Sloan was correct in November 2018, she'd still be correct today, which is you double the footprint, it's not 4 square anymore, et cetera, et cetera.
Alice,
Yes.
if the existing home had, if the original house.
This
was
is Becky Pantuso, by the way.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, that's good. That's good.
Alice, if the original structure had 6-inch siding on it, the 2018 addition, would it be, would the historic preservationist want the new addition to be 6 inches? And would the Chagrin ARB want the new to be 6 inches? Because clearly it sounds like something happened. A mistake may have happened in that Pain and Pain iteration where the siding no longer aligns. You know, something happened. Maybe I don't know I don't know what happened, but it seems like it was supposed to align and it doesn't now. Well, now, you know, something else somebody else did is now to some degree burdening my client or Jim Dustin, as it relates to this house. Like how do you reconcile that? And how is, you know, the existing siding that isn't original, or it's so hard to keep track of all the iterations, the gray siding that still remains on the front porch was not original, right? I mean, that's like particle board or something.
MDF. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not original siding.
Correct.
That was taken off. So it had already been resided at some point. So I just want to know, like, it's so hard. It's not original siding, but they can't take it off and remove it and match it with something that was approved by the ARB. Is that a fair synopsis of what's happening here?
The ABR never approved 6-inch siding on the addition. That what was put up without their full knowledge.
Correct.
It was misrepresented in the drawings. Yeah.
But the gray siding that's on the original 4-square house is not original siding.
Correct, but it is a narrower siding, which looks very close to the circa 1964 image of the house, as well as these historically sensitive houses in Chagrin Falls, which are included, their pictures are included in the report.
Right.
Alice, it's Dale Markowitz. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Becca. I thought you were done, Becky.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Alice, I want to try and clear this up for everybody on all sides.
Okay.
I want this thing to be fair, accurate, and consistent. Are you saying today that of the changes that we know that were approved, as that house sits with the approved changes, is it, in your opinion, a historically significant property under our codified ordinances?
The ABR made adjustments to the 2018 addition to set back the new portions and lower the roof line, from my understanding, so that they could be comfortable with allowing the the building owner at that time with enlarging the house to a point that they were more comfortable living with. So a house is not just simply historically significant because of its form. It also has to have integrity, and the form, materials, and integrity are listed as key in the village's ordinance, but the form is not the only thing. It's materials and integrity too. And integrity is outlined as a definition in the Exhibit A in the report as far as the national standards are considered. There are 7 aspects of integrity. Is this making sense? You're bringing it up. Yeah. So
Yeah,
scroll
go ahead.
down to integrity. You see that there are 7 aspects of integrity.
There you
It's
go.
identified by the National Park Service, which support nomination to the National Register of Historic Places. The 7 aspects are location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So it's not, I guess you could probably throw form in the design category, but it's not just form, it's not just materials. There has to be I should not say true. There has to be, I guess, the truth in the location, and that the building has not moved its setting, and that it still is surrounded by houses, residential area. It's not, an industrialized area. It still has its setting, and the design too. I mean, it still has the front porch. It still has the street presence. It still has the shed roof dormer. It's just been added to on the back. So it's not American Foursquare is a building type, not a style. So yes, it's no longer a square footprint. It is now a rectangular footprint, but that doesn't ultimately take away from the integrity of the entire structure as a whole. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, so
No one's nominating this house for the National Register of Historic Places, are they?
No, and no.
all right, so Alice, on pages 12 through 14 of your report,
Yes.
you go through all the different parts of the house, the porch, the dormer, the foundation, the siding, and the soffits, brackets, windows, side entry, gutters, downspouts, and then landscaping. And in each one of those situations, from what I'm reading here, you determined that the board's actions that are the subject of the 2 appeals were appropriate. So can you, without having to go through every single item on those 3 pages, can you explain to the board why you came to those conclusions?
Okay. Okay, let's see. The board, it's my understanding the board was never presented with a full set of plans saying this is all the proposed work that is planned for the property. It's, and as Dominic indicated earlier, there was no permit for all of the work that was done on the foundation, the siding, the bracket removal, the windows, the side entry that had that overhang roof with the copper metal on it on the top, and the copper gutters and downspouts. That was not presented ever in whole. The whole picture was not presented in whole to the ABR. So I think they've been having to piecemeal the plans together themselves as far as getting a picture for what's happening to the house. Does that answer the question?
Well, I was hoping you'd try and give me some.
Oh, you want to give some,
explanation, but let me interrupt you for 1 second. Let me ask you a sort of related question, which is,
okay.
Is there anything in your view that between the 2018 report and the 2021 report that changes your mind as to the historical significance of this house? Because the difference between 18 and 21 is that they turned it, if it's 100 years or more, it's presumed to be historically significant. So to me, that doesn't change your opinion of what that house was. If it was historically significant before that ordinance change, it should be after. Vice versa, if it wasn't before, it shouldn't after. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, yes. I agree.
Okay. So then why did you conclude then that the board's decisions that are the subject of the two appeals were appropriate in each instance? It's not a trick question, and it's not related to the other question. It's bringing back the question I had before, which was you came to the conclusion that in each case their decisions were appropriate, and you referenced either the national standards or you referenced the ordinances. So perhaps if you can just give it to us in summation, that would be fine. If you need to go through each one, that's what you got to do.
Okay. Page 12, the porch. The ABR maintains or states that the front porch is a historic element and that should be supported by the historic foundation.
Did you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
The configuration of the front facing gable of the porch, the columns and the piers are historic. They could move the railing back down. Yes. They could repair the columns in a way that would be bee-proof and look the way it does now. It's the roof columns and piers that define the character of that porch and are all historic and complement the house. Yes, that is what makes the house unique. Okay, and then it talks about restoring the porch, repairing the skirting, replacing the railings and stairs, I'm assuming in wood. The elevation is the only thing left that has any kind of historic character to it, and they would like to see it saved.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then it goes through the November report to the ABR and the December 21st and January 4th, when they let's see, it says the conditions included retaining the historic piers, the wood aesthetic, removing the existing railing and adding a new louver, lower wood railing, adding the vertical or horizontal lattice on the front and sides of the porch, and not installing stone. So they could have required removal of that contemporary stone without that extension, as I stated before, but instead decided to work with the owner for a mutually agreeable solution.
Can I interrupt just real quick? Because we're just going to go through all these bullet points. Is the house as it stands right at this moment still have historic significance in your mind, or has it been so stripped of all of its character, the 7 qualities that we got to the first 3, and then I didn't hear what feeling and the last
association.
Yeah, I don't know what that means or what the interpretation of that is, but I'm just questioning if we're we can zoom back out. We're talking and we're trying to find common ground on how to move forward. The pleas of the ABR are this is still historically significant, and I just ask you if that's true with those 7 things, because I feel like this house is not what it was at all. It has
Becky, hold up. You're starting to testify again. Let her just answer the question and let's move on.
Okay, yeah, move on.
There were visible historic elements that were still present before the most recent changes occurred. Yes, the siding was replaced, but it was still a narrow profile siding. And there was the stone foundation, the cast stone foundation had been exposed, but has since been covered over by the existing work. I mean, the current work. There is that existing front porch that does retain its design, even though the wood porch floorboards and stairs and railing have been replaced. It still has the structure of the original historic porch. There are elements on it that still show character, that still exhibit character defining features that make it a historically significant house in the eyes of the village.
Can I ask a question? Oh, Mary Lou Mellinger's been going for 2.5 hours. I just want to make sure she's okay and that we can keep going for a little while here. Mary Lou, I see you're muted and you're not videoed, but I know 2.5 hours could be a long time for a court reporter. I see Mary Lou's
I'm
talk.
good. Let's just keep going.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Alice, I had a question. Do you, in your capacity, are you involved in these kind of reviews for other cities and municipalities around in Northern Ohio?
No, I'm not personally involved, but another principal in my firm is involved in review for the city of Akron.
Okay, so you don't really have a lot of other. I guess what I wanted to ask you, and as an expert on this, and it sounds like you don't have enough information or experience to address it, but I'd still like to ask, and maybe someone else will have an opinion. I think one of the frustrating things I suspect for everybody involved, including ABR, is this constant, these meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting where there's this and that and this and we'll do this and do. Is it normal to have this kind of back and forth? It seems to me in a utopian world, which I know nothing about in this case, in this realm, but the applicant would say, here's what we want to do. The ABR would say, well, I don't think you should do this, this, or this, but do this, this, or this, and you're done. And
Yeah.
I can understand the frustration of the parties that this goes on for months and months and months. So yeah, you're saying yes to what?
I am saying that it is the owner and the applicant that need to come before the ABR and propose all of the work that is going to be done on the building so that the ABR can render an opinion and be done with it. The assumption is if it's not presented to the ABR, then no changes will be made. I don't want to get into, I don't think I can even talk about process, but I would hope that would make sense. It's not, I don't believe they can only go off of what is presented to them. And if the drawings show that if they're not called out as being, covering up the stone foundation, the cast stone foundation, if they're not calling out replacing historic siding, it's kind of, it goes under the radar. It's not completely being revealed and asked for permission.
Okay, so let's just say I wanted to build something, and I wanted to build a window that was 15 feet across, and ABR said, no, that's too. Is it incumbent upon ABR to say you can't build 15, but you can build 8? Or is it incumbent upon me to come back and say, okay, you won't let me do 15, and I understand your rationale, so I will now propose this. It's just the back and forth just seems, at least if nothing else, confusing to someone like me who's reviewing this and sharing the frustration of all the parties, that there's all these meetings, and I'm really trying to pay attention to who's saying what and what's happening, and it's hard to do so. So in my example, I come before the ABR and I say, I want to build a 10-foot window. And they say, no, that's not applicable. That you can't do that for reasons X, Y, and Z. Does that end it? And it's incumbent upon me, the applicant, to go back and say, I want to do this then? Or does the ABR tell me you can't build 10 feet, but you can do this?
I don't know if I can comment on the ABR's process in that regard.
Wade, I can make a comment. This is
Yeah.
Rob Jameson, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure, anyone.
So ABR can offer feedback. There's plenty of people that when they start a project, they come in as a walk-in to get feedback, to get an initial feel for what the ABR feels of what they're proposing. A lot of it is issue dependent. Sometimes if it's an easy matter, or not, I shouldn't say easy. Sometimes if it's something that the ABR feels they can give suggestion on, they do that. And other times there's more complex questions, roof lines, massing. It's a bigger picture sort of request, like, well, what would you approve here? And the ABR has chosen to say, well, we're not here to design your project, but we're telling you this is what we're concerned about on what you're proposing. And it is in those sorts of cases up to the applicant to go back and redesign and come back. And sometimes there are several rounds of going back and forth to get it right before it's something that the applicant wants and would be happy with, as well as what the ABR will approve. So there's both situations. It all is somewhat issue dependent. So ABR, to summarize, ABR does provide feedback, but at the same point, there's sometimes the scope gets larger than normal and they don't feel comfortable telling you, this is exactly what we would approve because there's a lot of unknowns.
Okay, maybe it's just because it's getting late and I'm getting cranky, but when I see just this constant back and forth of seemingly multiple meetings where it just bounces back and forth, I can see the frustration on everybody, and the Dustins in particular, when they're 2 years down the road and they still haven't finished the house. So I'm just.
Can I insert something? Is the bigger issue here the fact that there were things that were done that ABR wasn't aware of, the village wasn't aware of, and is that what started the ball rolling here on sort of increasing scrutiny on what was going on? And I guess if that's the case, were those things that were done? I'm kind of losing track of. Is there an assertion that they were done by the previous owner, or were some of them done by the current owner? And is that driving some of this? As opposed to saying, okay, what really needs to be done here to get this resolved? And I don't know who I'm asking that question of, whether it's Rob or whether it's Dale or whether it's the applicant.
Well, I think that there would be a thorough review if all of these items were proposed originally. I think you'd still have the same review, and I think you'd pretty much. And again, I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to go down that road, but I can say that with the items that were voted on and the motions made, they were based on what the ABR interpreted as following the code and what was supported by what Alice said.
Well, I have. Are there other immediately burning questions or comments right at this moment?
Could I just ask one? What will hopefully be my final question?
Sure, this is Phil again.
This is Phil. Thank you, sir. Question for Ms. Sloan, just to confirm, based on the answer you gave to Becky's question from a minute ago. A property is either historically significant or not, right? As an all-in, right? It's either the structure is historically significant, or the structure is not historically significant. It's not bits and pieces, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Structure as a whole. And you have to look at all the aspects of what constitutes the whole. And there are 7 aspects of integrity. And integrity is cited in the ordinance: integrity, form, and materials.
Well, just so I understand that, the definition of integrity in your report is not contained in our code, is it?
Um,
Dale, do you know?
Dale, do you know?
It's getting late, as you said, but my recollection is that it's referenced through the national standards, but it's not specific, but I'm going to verify that right now.
Here's what I would suggest, and I'm especially mindful of the fact that Dustin's have waited as everyone else has been waiting forever to resolve these things. What I would suggest is my experience is meetings that go this long tend to become increasingly less effective when you hit 3 hours. I think we have ferreted, if not all the facts, most of them. What I would suggest, I have not seen this full report, which I appreciate we've gone through in pretty good detail. But I would like to get the timeline that Rob gave us, B, the full reports, all 3 reports from Prospectus, perhaps an opportunity to review the YouTube video of the one ABR meeting, and revisit this. We have a special meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, I believe.
Wade, real question. What ABR meeting YouTube did you want to see that?
It was the meeting that
So on the
Phil represented, that it was stated that we have to draw the line in the sand or something like that.
so that was that the latest
It was January 5th or something?
January
I
4th
believe
meeting,
it's
the most
the
current one?
December 21st.
December 21st, I believe.
Okay,
yeah.
December 20. Okay,
And
I'll send
January,
out
just to be clear, January 4th.
January. Okay,
The one that's
4th.
been taken off of YouTube.
yes.
Yes. So what I would propose is, again, that we get those documents shared to the BZA for our consideration. We reconvene, and I don't know if we can do it at the beginning of our meeting. That's next week. We have other ABR appeals that we broke off from this meeting, knowing this meeting would go long. But that since we have, I believe, all the facts, maybe we give each side a closing argument, if they will. But it gives us a chance to review these documents a little more thoughtfully than, just going through them tonight. We break for the evening and reconvene on next Tuesday, as I said, after we've shared those documents with whoever wants them, but certainly the BZA. And then again, whether we call them closing arguments or just some final thoughts from anybody who wants to give them, and then the board makes a decision.
Wade, yeah, it's Dale. 3 things. One is, I don't know that the applicant has presented everything they wanted to put in on the siding. Number 2,
That's
if we're going to meet on March 1st, it's going to be a live meeting. It will not be virtual. And I forgot what my 3rd one was already. But and we need to make sure that Alice is available.
I just presented, I mean, I don't know how long our other issues are going to take and whether we should put this in front of them or after them. But I really don't want to take our meeting much longer so people lose effectiveness in
Would it be
thought.
possible to start that meeting earlier on next Tuesday, just because to give them more opportunity?
Well, because we don't have a notice issue with the people on this call,
I wouldn't
correct,
think
Dale?
so.
We have a notice issue if we're going to present more evidence, which is why I wanted to find out if the plaintiff or the appellant still wanted to present. If that's the case, then my recommendation is that we wait until our regular meeting in March and hold it, which is the 22nd.
And we were talking about rescheduling that one because of conflicts with spring break.
That's
Some
true.
members were not available.
And we're sensitive to the time, how, that Wade doesn't want to drag this out, and I completely concur.
Yeah, and Dale, we can with fresh eyes, double check in the morning, but the board has our paper submission and the minutes that would be relevant, and it may be the case where we'd be comfortable just making a summation argument without any actual additional sworn testimony.
Yeah, we certainly took a lot more of the siding evidence than I intended, but I'm glad it just sort of
Right.
flowed naturally. And I don't know, we certainly heard a lot on that.
So
Yeah.
I just have a question, Phil Eckenrode. The documents that you sent me for screen sharing at this meeting tonight, I have not yet sent those to the BZA because I expected them to be shown tonight as evidence. My question is, do you want to do that now to enter those into evidence? And then I
Oh,
can
sure.
distribute them to the board. I think we want to make sure that there's a clarity that of when they're getting what.
Sure, yeah, and that's procedurally, I assumed that they would already have had them. So yeah, absolutely. Whatever I sent you, they can have. And if you need me to identify them on the record.
So Dale, what would be the appropriate procedure of bringing those up? Do we have to go through them all, or do we just have to
No.
show them and bring them up?
Well, what you normally do is they request that they be submitted, and we can also have Alice's report submitted, and the board has to agree to include those as part of the record. So the board would make a motion to accept those documents into the record.
Do we need to identify them other than the documents that Phil just referred to?
Well, it's the two documents that Phil referred to and the January 21 revised January 27 report of Alice. But Phil also had two letters that he wrote to the board. And I think I assume you want both in the record, don't you, Phil?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And then there was 5 exhibits as well.
The most
Meeting
recent.
minutes, which I've already sent to the board as well, but those are, yeah, the same meeting minutes that I've sent out also, but
There's exhibits A through E. And
correct.
then there's Alice's new report. And then there's Phil's two documents that he wanted submitted tonight. Phil, can you tell us what they are so we can just have it on the record?
Sorry, you didn't mean by reference to the letters?
No, the two documents that you gave to Rob last week, I think it was on Friday, to put into the record.
I had a letter and 5 exhibits was what my notes
Was it-
show.
Let me see if I can find it from.
We
my,
received one letter.
Yeah, Dale, it was just that letter and the exhibits on Thursday, the 17th.
Okay,
So I
We
think
already
we've
have the
received
letter.
it. Yeah, and I think we got the exhibits were the minutes.
We
Yes.
probably have it all.
Yeah, we have that.
Oh,
Yep, and the
Okay.
2018 report was one of the exhibits as well.
Yeah, we have that.
We just don't have the latest one.
the latest,
And that's the one that is in front of us right now.
right.
So do we want a motion to accept as exhibits the latest prospectus report from 1/27/22 and all of the exhibits submitted by the applicant, exhibits 1 through 5 or A through E? That's a motion.
Second.
So,
Well,
and
you
then
gotta
I,
vote on, you got to vote on it.
well, I just want to make sure that we heard, Phil said he does not envision producing any new evidence. To get to your issue, Dale, about whether we can do this next Tuesday.
Can I ask a question, Wade, before you move forward?
Please, yep.
You said next Tuesday, is that the 1st or the 8th?
The first.
Okay.
So Dale, I just want to confirm that we don't have a 15-day notice issue. And Phil had already said, I believe, that he thought with the documents we've talked about, with what we've done tonight, and the potential for closing arguments, that the appellant would be okay with not producing any new evidence.
I thought he said he wanted to make that decision in the morning with clear eye, clear head.
Oh, did I miss that?
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, no, I'm fairly confident in that, but I'd be remiss to not take a pause here after 3 hours and
Sure. So,
confirm.
okay. So if you, upon further thought, think, Phil, there's no more need to produce any evidence beyond which we've talked about tonight, then I would propose, and I don't know, I'm in negotiations next Tuesday in Canton, but I should be back early enough. Do do we want to go earlier than 7:30, which is the start of the, our meeting? I mean, I don't know if others can make, if we said 6:30 or something like that.
You have two other matters that night that are fairly typical variances.
I thought there were also ABR appeals.
One's an ABR appeal and one's a standard variance.
Okay.
That's why I thought
Okay.
we should start early. Did you want to vote on my motion about the exhibits before it gets lost?
Right, please.
Yes. So that was a motion to accept the additional documents and evidence, which included Alice's 3 reports. And what else?
And the 5 exhibits from the applicant, which included the letter from council and the minutes.
So the letter
Um,
and 5 exhibits
right.
from the applicant
Mhm.
letter. And I'm just making sure I have this detail.
Yeah,
correct.
those are exhibits A through E.
And my November letter as well, or technically Amanda's November letter. Thank you.
Right, we have that.
And you have the November, so this letter would be the February 17th
And
letter.
are we counting the January 4th YouTube video as an exhibit as well?
You can.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
That's fine.
Okay. So we'll add that to the motion as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Motion to accept additional documents into evidence, including Alice Prospectus Architecture's 3 reports. The letter dated February 17th, 2022 from Phil Eckenrode and exhibits A through E, and the link to the January 4th ABR video. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Correct.
That's motion by Lisa Kramer. Is there a second?
Second.
Vote roll, please.
Freshman Johnson,
Aye.
Frick,
Aye.
Holdren,
Aye.
Kramer,
Aye.
Drum.
Aye.
So I guess then we'll wait to hear from, we'll wait to hear from Phil as to whether he needs to produce any more evidence. If he does not, we can proceed. How do we do that? Can we do a motion by email, or how do we do that, Dale, when we hear tomorrow?
Well, as the chair, you can set that. Well, what you can do is, I would recommend you set it tonight and just condition it if the appellant seeks additional testimony,
Okay.
that will change the meeting to another date in March.
And do we have an idea on time? Does anybody care on time for next Tuesday if appellant does not want to produce additional evidence?
7 is fine, 6:30 is fine.
Anyone else have an opinion? I'll be coming from Canton, but I think I'll be, back by 6, the latest. 7, do you want to go 6:30, 7? Anyone else care?
6:30 is good.
Works for me.
6:30?
Works.
Okay. So let's, I would move that we conditionally schedule a continuation of tonight's hearing to 6:30 p.m. on Monday, March the 1st. And
Tuesday.
the condition is that the appellant decides that it does not need to produce additional facts, and we should know that tomorrow.
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, March 1.
Second.
Roll.
Okay, Frick,
Aye.
Holdren,
Aye.
Kramer,
Aye.
Drum,
Aye.
Freshman Johnson.
Aye.
So Rob, you can gather the missing stuff, the few things that we don't have, and get those out to us pretty quickly, regardless of whether.
Absolutely, and yes, and I have the list of that, and I will copy Phil Eckenrode and all matters
Great.
sent out, so all parties involved, and Alice Sloan, so all parties involved have all the materials that are being sent out.
Okay.
Great.
And then will Phil communicate with Dale, or who should Phil communicate with his decision tomorrow?
You can let Rob and I both know.
By email?
Sure.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, got that, Phil?
Yes,
Phil?
thank you. Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Is there anything else to come before us tonight?
Nope.
Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. We're close to resolution, whatever that might be.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Good night all.
Thanks. Right.
Thank you.